Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Let's Talk About. Let's Talk About is a weekday, or let me say midweek program, which comes from the Trinity United Church Legon here on the campus of Trinity Theological Seminary in Legon, where we get to talk about everything that pertains to the life of the Christian living in this world. And a number of people every year are reported to die not because they were killed by health reasons or any other matters, or even if they were killed, but the fact that they themselves take their lives. A phenomenon known as suicide. And from various studies, it is indicated that these issues of suicide, people taking their own lives, is triggered by all manner of things. Some of them psychosocial, and being in a country like ours, it sits within a certain legal regime. And so, for a very long time, it was criminal to take one's life or even aid somebody for the person to take their lives. This evening on Let's Talk About, we are talking about suicide. Because it's a big issue. In fact, for the first half of this year, the total number of deaths reported from suicide is in excess of the total number of deaths from suicide for the whole of the year 2023. Which means, here in Ghana, although this phenomenon is significantly underreported, its prevalence is still increasing. And so it's important that we have this conversation. So we are joined this evening by people who understand these matters much better than I do to help us to break it down and to bring some understanding to you. My name is Benjamin Ofeado. I'm going to be your host this evening from now through till 8 p.m. And just to introduce my panel this evening, to my immediate left is lawyer Edmond Ni Obodai Akron, and he joins us this evening. Ni Obodai, you're welcome to Let's Talk About.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Great. Also joining us is our associate minister here at Trinity United Church, Reverend William N.T. He joins us this evening as well. Reverend, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And this evening also joining us is a psychiatrist. She goes by the name Dr. Mrs. Lavina Jima. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
We want to hear from you on the conversation we are going to be having. So we would want you to drop us your own comments, questions, suggestions about the conversation we are having. You can drop us a message on our live stream that's on Facebook as well as on YouTube. In a bit, I'll be announcing the WhatsApp number to which you can send your messages as well. Let me start with you, Lavina. So, suicide. For those who are living probably under a rock and don't know what suicide is, what is suicide?
Okay. So, suicide, as you already mentioned, is a cry for help, an act of an individual taking their own life. And I'm sure we would all admit that the nature of man is to self-preserve, such that even if you are slipping, the automatic reaction is to ensure that you stand firm. And so for an individual to take their own life means that it's indeed an issue. And so it's quite a distressing and traumatizing event that can happen to an individual. The good news is that it's preventable.
So this is you saying somebody getting to a point where the natural course of life doesn't make sense to them again.
Right.
And so instead of self-preserving, they self-destruct.
Sure.
So they rather take their own lives.
Yes.
Reverend, I mean, is this a thing that the church is aware of? Has this come to the notice of the church over the period? Is this something that the church has had to deal with in any way or form over the period?
Yes, I would say that once it happens and some are reported, the church is aware. And I believe in some churches, people might have experienced that in some churches. So the church is aware. And per the nature of our culture and the rest, handling it has been very much on the quiet side over the years. So that if we really want much information about how churches deal with it, it will be from specific churches or congregations than the generalized church because of issues of stigma and other things. So, yeah, there are churches that have handled it, but I believe the church can do more. Yeah.
I'm hearing you say that there's a stigma to it.
Sure.
So it's a matter not typically dealt with in the open. And it's not a thing that typically the church as a whole particularly pays attention to, except for certain congregations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, for some of us, I mean, the learnings are that for a very long time, if someone tries to commit suicide and they succeed, they are dead. But when they are unsuccessful, it was an offense for which they were to be punished. I mean, what has been the legal regime around the issue of suicide over the period?
Okay, thank you, Benjamin. Like you said, in the past, it was an offense to attempt to end one's life. Because obviously, if you're successful, you'll not be around to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
So it was the attempt was what was criminalized. And they even went as far as criminalizing the act of someone aiding someone to commit suicide. That also was an offense. That still is an offense. There's just been a small twist to it. So in the past, if you attempted to commit suicide and you were unsuccessful, you are liable to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 years.
Okay.
And bear in mind, this law was passed somewhere in the 60s, so probably there was not an understanding of these issues in this country as at then. Even today, or even in our recent times, I feel like people still do not get things. Men are told not to cry, all these things. Yeah. So, so in the past, like I said, you were liable to go to prison for a term of not more than 3 years if you attempted and you were unsuccessful.
Okay.
And someone who also aided you or abetted you, that person was liable to a term of imprisonment. That one was even worse than the person who actually attempted the suicide. That one was you were liable to go to prison for a term for, if I remember correctly, up to life. So that one's quite harsh. Yeah. So, but recently, as early as last year, in April, the president assented to the bill that decriminalized attempted suicide. So, but if you aid someone, it's still an offense. The difference is that now in the law the law has introduced a concept whereby if you know someone has suicidal thoughts,
Yeah.
and you assist them, then it's an offense. So they've added another leg to that. You should have known that the person was entertaining suicidal thoughts. Whereas in the past, nobody cared whether once you actually
Aided in any way.
then you were also liable to, but the punishment still remains the same though.
Up to life
Yes,
imprisonment.
up to life. We call it a first degree felony.
Felony, yeah.
Yes. But in recent times, the attempt has been decriminalized, and what the law also did was to insert a provision into the Mental Health Act.
So we'll come to that element, the
Sure.
progression of the law over the period to provide some form of support. But let's get a better understanding of what the causes are. You are a psychiatrist, you're a medical doctor, a psychiatrist. So over the period, you know, Reverend Enti said something about the stigma that comes with it.
Yeah.
And so people do not typically talk about challenges they are having. Oboda hinted that it is said that, for instance, memensu, you know, what tends to lead somebody typically to want to get to the point where they actually decide on taking their own lives? Is it a matter of psychology? Is it a matter of social consequence? What is it, a spiritual issue? You know, what really tends to be the causes?
So thank you very much. So the issue of what causes or what would push somebody to end their life is very complex. And it's very, you cannot just say that it is A, B, or C. Usually, it's a myriad of situations. But we know that some may be due to somebody living with a mental health condition, like somebody who is severely depressed, somebody who has what we call a psychotic condition, or somebody who has also substance use disorders, alcohol disorders, other substances of abuse, somebody who is impulsive. So there are some conditions where people may become, they do things without forethought. So they may, take on risky behaviors without really thinking about the consequence. Again, people in financial distress, people in dysfunctional family system. When there are issues, marital issues related to stress in education, guilt, and all manner of social situations can actually push somebody to the point that they say that, okay, I've had enough. And so they think that at that point, the way out is to exit from this world. But like I said, it's a rather complex situation.
I'm hearing you talk about the psychological issues, and I'll be staying with you a little further on this because we need to break it down. You speak about somebody who probably has a mental condition.
Yes.
The person being maybe psychotic, the person having extreme depression, and
alcohol, other
substance use, and all of those things.
Yes.
So intoxication.
Intoxication, it can be intoxication,
whichever
it can
way.
be other.
And then you come
related.
talk about social issues, maybe certain family pressures, family conditions, financial challenges. You talk about stresses.
Yes.
All manner of stresses.
All
and all
manner
of
of stresses.
So, especially around the issue of stress, I think right now in this country, everybody is experiencing
stress.
one form or the other of stress.
Yes.
Financial
It's
stress is
everywhere.
a no-brainer. Everybody is talking about that. But there are some people even in the workplace, the enormity of the work they have to do, how they are spent. And now we are realizing a lot more people spend much time doing work. All right. Has that made us a lot more predisposed to suicide than previous times, or the situation has actually become better over the period?
Okay. So having work can be protective in a way because it gives you the means to meet your daily needs as well as other commitments. However, it can also sometimes be challenging, particularly if you are not able to perform, if you have unreasonable targets, if the work environment is not supportive, toxic. Yes, it can also be a stressor. Yeah.
So you're saying work is two-edged.
It's two-edged, really.
So it can be protective in that it can provide you
With the means.
Yeah. Which takes a certain trouble away.
Yes.
But that in itself could be posing certain trouble
Yes.
if it is not optimal.
Yes.
Reverend, and the church deals with all kinds of people. All kinds of people who may have all kinds of conditions or challenges in life.
Sure.
On the psychological side, as she mentioned, everybody is coming, like the church is like a hospital, really,
Yeah.
where everybody is seeking a solution.
Sure.
So we are all coming there with problems. Has it been identified in any of the engagement? Because we know the church has a certain counseling system and wellness. At least in our church, we have the counseling and wellness system that is supposed to be providing that kind of protection.
Sure.
Has it come up in engagements in any way where we are getting to find out that there are predispositions being demonstrated by some of our membership?
Sure. Personally, I've encountered that situation where in one of the congregations I worked in, the father calls me and tells me the house help has called him that the son has taken a knife, wants to kill himself. But where he works, by the time he gets home, it might have happened. So he called, I was closer to go, and I had to stop what I was doing and got it. And when I got there, it was true. But the house help had money to take the knife. It was all because the guy thinks he had been masturbating and that he has disappointed God.
So
the
guilt.
junior youth, yes. So I had to stay around, prayer upon prayer. Then when he calmed down, engaged him, it was there that he told me it's because he been masturbating from GHS2. He was then in SHS2 at somewhere Western region.
Yeah.
And it was a hell of a time. From there, I had to prompt my boss that we ought to be on the lookout for such people and find a way, create a ministry to help them. Either than that. So having met this, I'm always on the lookout for people who may be coming to church, being that quiet, you need to engage them to find out what is making them look like that, moody, quiet, sad, gloomy. The more we find out this, it can help save a lot of people from getting to that level. So there has been such situations as have been encountered by the churches. And as I said, the discussions on them do not come out publicly.
Yeah.
It has often been, sometimes mostly between, say, the person or close relatives and the pastor. And that ends it. Others do not even hear about it. As to whether it was able to become successful where the person was totally brought out of it. Because remember, the pastor may be transferred. When he goes, what happens? So it's something that we really need to look at very well. Other than that, people may be harboring it to a time that it will become too late to reverse it. And so the church ought to sit up and find ways of identifying people who may be having certain challenges which can lead them to thinking of committing suicide.
I'm coming back to you, Levina, and Oboda, I'll come back to you later so we can look at how we have progressed legally to protect our people. On this issue of guilt.
Guilt, yeah.
If someone is feeling guilty, that means they have a certain standard of morality against which they are benchmarking their actions. All right. Is it the case that you find a lot more religious people finding themselves at a place of wanting to tip off as opposed to non-religious people from your practice and experience?
So again, religion is a double edge. It may hold others and give them hope, a sense of support. However, in other places, like Osofu gave the example, it may make people feel judged and unworthy of God's forgiveness, such that they feel that they are not worthy to live. So yes, religion can be protective, but then if we do not manage situations well, and our people don't understand what it is, that if we say God is love, how vast is that love? Does it cover me to the point where I have sinned? And if I'm able to open up, he's available, like the prodigal son, open his arms and have me come back to him.
And Oboda, listening to Dr. Jima, you hear the judgmental side of religion, and then you hear the humanitarian side of religion as well. Similarly, in the law, and you were talking about how even the law as existed was passed somewhere as far back as 1960, where the theory which kind of supported the law as was passed was very much of punishment of the person because of an act, and also supposed to be a deterrent. How has the law on this issue evolved to look at the humanitarian side of things to ensure that it's supposed to be more protective based on the understanding of some of the causes that lead people to wanting to get to this point?
Okay, thank you. So typically, if something is a crime, or the essence of punishment in criminal actions is twofold. It's to deter, and it's to, another leg is retributive. Basically, an eye for an eye. You've done something to somebody who is a member of society, so we also have to do something to you. But going forward, nowadays, the criminal justice system also seeks to reform. So apart from acting as a deterrent and punishing, you try to reform somebody so when they go through it, they come out better than they went in. But in our part of the world, you have a case where people go in and master the trade, that send them there. Moving forward, the law has moved to a position where it recognizes that people who attempt suicide actually need help. This has been on the back of a lot of advocacy, because when I was doing some reading, I realized that in the UK, as far back as 1961, they decriminalized attempted suicide. And
1961?
Yes, 1961.
And we passed ours 1960?
Yes, and
we didn't learn from that a year after? Okay.
No. So we have traveled all the way to, the law came into effect in 3rd April 2023. It's taken us a while to learn our lessons, and probably because mental health issues are now coming to the fore. People are understanding that I'm not the only one going through, you're not the only one going through. So it's come to the fore. I'm sure probably 5-10 years back, mental health, that phrase, it wasn't that common to hear. You would have probably heard disorder. Yeah, so what the law has done is to understand, or the law seeks to do now, is that it understands that it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
So they've actually, so instead of a punishment, they seek to ensure that someone who is suffering or has that state of mind is actually treated. Okay. So somewhere in 2012, we passed a new Mental Health Act. So when suicide was, attempted suicide was decriminalized, we call something a consequential amendment. Basically, a change to one law has affected something else. So then the Mental Health Act, a portion of it was amended. They just slotted in a line that said that basically if you attempt suicide, we presume or assume that you are suffering from a severe mental disorder. The mental health practitioners might not agree with that definition, but that's what it is. So under the Mental Health Act, there's room for voluntary treatment, where you can walk into a general health facility, and when you are assessed, you can be referred to a mental health facility, or you can walk straight to a mental health facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can go to a general hospital or go to a specialist facility.
Yeah, generally.
And do you have to pay for such services, or the law is silent?
The law is silent, and I'm sure the experts can speak to whether.
Yeah, Levina, let's find out around that. Should someone approach your facility having mental health conditions, is it a service which is covered by the state, or one that the patient will have to pay for?
Okay. So you can assess mental health by several routes. Through a private facility, through a public facility. The public facility, you can through a general health facility. So you can go to La General Hospital or Ridge Hospital and see a general practitioner. If you have a valid NHIA card, that will be covered.
Oh, so the service is covered under the health insurance scheme?
That is, if you go through, like you go to a general OPD, you make a card, you present your NHIA card, you sit before the clinician, they assess you. That service is covered. But if it's, you are given a diagnosis of a mental health condition for which you have to be treated specifically for a mental health condition, and maybe you are referred to a mental health facility, that service is not covered under NHIA currently, because by law, mental health services are supposed to be free. Free means someone else must pay for it, and usually it's government. Unfortunately, because of challenges and sometimes not so prioritizing mental health, the services are not free. It's payment at the point of service. Currently, there's an active engagement with NHIA for NHIA to cover some selected mental health condition. If that happens, then even in the psychiatric facilities, those conditions can be paid through NHIA. But at present, as we have it today, that is the situation.
So, per the position of the law, as you are saying, mental health services in a public health facility are not supposed to be paid for by patients.
Yes, position of the law.
That's that. However, when you go to the OPD of a public health institution where you are having your initial engagement with a clinician, if you have a valid National Health Insurance Scheme card, then that initial service is covered by insurance.
Yeah.
But should you be referred to a specialist to obtain treatment, it is not covered by insurance.
Yes.
And so we are not enforcing the law, to simply put it. Okay. If you are just joining this, let's talk about. We are talking about suicide. Suicide. And it is becoming a lot more apparent that much as this may have its social or psychosocial underpinnings, has a certain legal regime within which it's working, and there are even religious elements to it, it ultimately gets to a point where it is a mental health issue. So we are talking about that, and we want to hear from you as well. We'll be going for a quick break. When we're back, we'll be looking at other aspects of it, but we want you to join us in the conversation. So we want you to send us a WhatsApp message, your comments, your questions, your suggestions on 0501 579996. That's 0501 579996. Or you can drop a message on the live Facebook or YouTube stream. This Let's Talk About. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians. With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians. With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
You're welcome back. This is still Let's Talk About, and today we are talking about suicide. People choosing to take their own lives. Well, people will typically say it's voluntary because they take the decision to take their own lives, but it is appearing that there are certain factors sometimes beyond the control of the persons. And so we've been looking at what the status quo is, how prevalent the issue is, what's the legal regime supporting it, what is the church's response to the phenomenon in itself, the state's position as far as suicide is concerned, how it has evolved. And we've been helped greatly by Dr. Lavina Jima, who is a psychiatrist, also Reverend William Enti, who is an associate minister here at Trinity United Church, and Mr. Edmond Neobodayakron, who is a legal practitioner. And they've been taking us through the conversation greatly. For the second leg of the conversation, we'll be looking more at how we get to provide support. What is the Psychology Society doing? What can be done within the social environment to provide support? What is being done by the church by way of response and its own recommendations on how to deal with this phenomenon, and what the state is doing to support as well. So let me come back to you, Lavina. You know, on the notes that we concluded, clearly, everything eventually feeds into the mind, making the person feel either unworthy to be living or trying to escape
Pain.
certain consequences. I mean, you talking about the causes, one of the things that was spoken about was, for instance, certain financial challenges and all. There are certain people who feel they don't want to bear the consequences of certain things and certain actions they've taken and all that. By way of a support for such people and looking at the causes to identify how we can mitigate these things, talk us through what are some of the things that can be practically done from the various stakeholder points, be it family, be it close relations, the office environment, all the sources of the things that trigger people to want to take their lives.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Okay. So, interestingly, yesterday, the global community commemorated suicide prevention. And so every 10th September, we talk about suicide prevention to, one, create awareness of the condition. Why should we talk about it? We know that globally, 700,000 people end their life. And we say that every 40 seconds. So start thinking about when.
Every 40 seconds.
Every 40 seconds, a person ends their lives. So imagine when we started this program till now, around the world. And sometimes these figures are even underreported because of some places it's a taboo, and sometimes you may not even know the cause of death. Okay.
No, so you said what? Every 10th September?
Every 10th September.
For how long has this been commemorated?
So I mean, I can't remember, but it's been at least, I think about less than a decade.
Oh, less than a decade?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Then that's fine. Because, you know, 11th September, suicide bombers took certain actions.
Okay,
so,
9/11.
Yes.
Right. So, what we are doing now, talking about suicide, I mean, the theme is changing the narrative.
Yeah.
We are changing the narrative because we want to make the discussion an open conversation. We want to normalize the conversation around mental health, around suicide, around the struggles that individually we may go through at certain times of our lives, for which we may be pushed to that point. To make it simple for me to talk to Osofo, talk to you that I am struggling, and for you to understand me and not judge me and provide me that support. It could be just the listening ear. It could be holding my hand. It should be directing me into a specific source of support that I'm not at that point thinking through to find or may not be aware of.
And because you say that, let me just interject so that I can focus your response a lot more. Let's take the family, for instance.
Right.
You talk about support. from some of the readings, it's indicative that people who have stronger support systems tend not to be more inclined to take their own lives. Within the family, and maybe you can help us with some data. From the data, what is the prevalence like in men relative to women?
Okay. So if we talk about gender, more females tend to attempt. Yes. But more men
Succeed.
would, yes. One, because they may use more lethal means, like shooting, so they tend to be more
successful at dying.
aggressive, use a more aggressive and more lethal means. Yes.
So a lot more women attempt to, but are unsuccessful. So, I mean, in the previous legal regime, that would mean that a lot more women would have been put in prison.
Well, something is only a crime when it's found out.
Yes.
That is the other
So
thing.
these are not things that, say,
We
someone
usually would
chances upon their child, they are not going to report their child to the police.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So within that, with that knowledge,
Yes.
what should spouses, for instance, be doing a lot more for their partners in respect of this issue of suicide and with the data that is backing us?
So it's important to understand that stresses of life, we cannot run away from them. It's part and parcel of life. But how do we address them? I mean, even recognizing and working your way through, either through the support of others or in building your own support systems. Unfortunately, now we are becoming a more nuclear society, such that you talk to people, they don't know they have a hometown beyond Accra where they were born and are raised. They don't know cousins. They don't know, I mean, they've never gone over to sleep over in another person's house. It's them, their parents, their biological siblings. That's where it ends.
And tomatoes
So
are
we
even grown in the grocery shop.
Yes.
That's their knowledge.
That's where they go. They don't know Makola. They don't know Agbobloshi. So we are gradually ridding ourselves of the social networks that was cushioning us in times of distress.
So what you are saying is the presence of a broader network of social support
Yes.
is more protecting.
It's more protecting.
But does that not also make people feel a lot more guilty and having let a lot more people down when they do something that they think will be disgraceful to such groupings that they are part of?
So it depends on the quality of that relationship. Because their friends, it doesn't matter what you've done. You can openly tell them what you've done. And they would understand. Or they may even seem to share your concern and be able to help you out.
Okay, now you've spoken from the victim point. I want you to speak more from the network point. I mean, what should people do to be more protecting of the people that they find themselves in the same social spaces?
Right. So we need to improve on our social relationship. I mean, we need to go beyond seeing. There are some people, not every smile is a smile. There are people who keep a smile, but deep down are struggling. So we need to really, really check on people. There are times where you've not seen somebody for a long time. It will be helpful to just pick a phone and call. Oh, I haven't seen you in church. I haven't seen you in the places that we meet together for a long while. Is anything happening? And you'll be amazed at how their eyes will lit just for the fact that you've taken a phone to call them. And they are more likely to tell you something that is happening because they know that you care about them. You are concerned about them. That would make you take a phone and give them a call to check up on them because maybe they've not been seen around for a while. So we need to improve the quality of our network systems, our social support, beyond hello, hi, or emojis on WhatsApp.
Let's talk about the organizational psychology. especially when it comes to the work environment.
Okay.
A lot of stresses seem to be coming from people's economic endeavors.
Yes.
And how organizations are structured and the kinds of demands on people and all of that, as you have indicated already, may be putting a lot more people through certain levels of stress.
Okay.
What would you advise to organizations, owners, managers at different levels,
Okay.
when it comes to their relations with their people
Okay.
and how their work environment is supposed to be?
All right. So for every organization, your best resource is your human resource. Without them, nothing happens. So their well-being should be priority, and not just on paper, but it should be put into practice. So we need to create a very supporting environment. Yes, you need to have policies that says that these are your duties, these are measures to ensure that you do what you need to do, but it needs to be in a more supportive and enabling environment. So we have what we call employee assisted programs or workplace mental health systems or structures that we can set up. You'll be amazed that people will do something, but they know when you care about them, regardless of what has happened, and when you are just doing your job to get your business running.
Yeah.
So if somebody, you see your colleague or your employee, quiet, out of their usual maybe bubbly nature or interactive nature, and it persists for a while, it will be helpful to call them and find out. I've noticed that these days, ABC, is anything wrong? Just to find out beyond the work, how are other aspects of their lives, their family relations, are they struggling in any way that you can support? It could be child care issues. Are you able to maybe give them a few days to sort out issues that are real and pertinent? Looking at the demographics of your people, are you able to set a time aside where you have meetings to talk about staff welfare? Are you able to create a system where you have what we call the buddy system? We pair each other. I call you, you call me. Maybe we are expected to meet up and just chat beyond work to properly network and be more understanding of each other and be more supportive. Are we able to create that structures within the work environment so that people know that beyond producing and improving your end line, my life matters? Do we have health insurance policies that caters for our workers such that if I fall ill today, I don't have to worry about digging into my reserves to seek health care? And so these are a few things that we need to start rethinking, because you realize that in the long term, it yields more results than being stingy, being, more punitive in our approach to support, our work environment.
Even, engenders employee loyalty
Yes.
to the organization, knowing
Yes.
that you really care for them. And Onoboda, you being a lawyer, having worked in different organizations, aside from a practicing firm, other industries, how have you seen the implementation of some of these measures to ensure that people are kept sane, even as they are supposed to be providing value for the various organizations that they are working with?
Okay, thank you, Ben. The employer has a duty imposed on them by law to ensure that they provide a working environment that is not a hostile one that is safe for workers, one that enables them to produce the best of their abilities. I think for different organizations have different ways of looking at it. Some organizations decide that, like she said, we take care of you. There's health insurance, there are adequate leave days, some even beyond the statutory leave days. Some people have paternal leave all those kind of things help the workers' mental health. Interestingly, in Australia, there's been a development where a court ruled that you can't call somebody outside of work hours and expect them to answer the calls. A worker who has closed, you say that work is from 8 to 5, 9 to 5, and at 6 your boss is calling you. You are under no obligation to answer.
Oh, was it in a case decided or from policy?
Yeah, that's the current position in Australia now.
Wow.
Yeah, that when you close, you close. Yes, and also things like respecting people's leave days.
And I really hope that this message finds a way to get to the Minister for Labour Relations. Because, yeah.
Respecting people's leave. That's also another way. That when someone's actually on leave, they're on leave. You don't.
Oh goodness.
Most organizations say in their handbooks that we can recall you, but I believe that if business continuity measures are put in place properly, if Benjamin is going away for 30 days, his work should not suffer.
Sure.
Yes, but we live in an environment, especially when it comes to businesses that are run by, so let's say sole proprietorships. That's where you see that it's a one-man show. Usually there's not a lot of welfare. In organizations where they are unionized, you can't play with employees because they have a voice, they have a united front. They have people who can speak for them. So I think those are some of the things that ensure that people stay sane. Some people don't believe that at work you have friends. So they might not even buy into this buddy system because they believe that a colleague is just a colleague. A colleague is not a friend. So I know some organizations have helplines that are supposed to be private, where you can dial in and speak to somebody, sometimes even without seeing the person. You dial in and you can speak to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But unfortunately, privacy issues come to the fore. Issues where it's like an anonymous survey in quotes.
Meanwhile, they are collecting email addresses.
Yeah, or you have a skip level meeting where you go over your boss's head to report to your boss's superior. You find out that whatever you said there trickles down. So people sometimes do not use these measures.
Mistrust.
People do not use this message because people find out. You speak to somebody about an issue, and then the next day you come to work and your boss, who is not supposed to know, says, "Oh, how's that your thing? How's it going?" You know, so privacy issues come to the fore, and you being an employee who wants to keep his or her job, you are not now come to challenge your boss to say, "How do you know this?"
Yeah.
So all these things come to the fore. So,
and Obodo, I'll be coming to you for you to talk to us about, there is the voluntary element of
the treatment.
one seeking for treatment, but is there a system where the state identifies that there's a practical challenge for which you'd be compelled to be made to seek some treatment? I'll come back to you on that. Let me find out from Reverend William N.T. The church, in its support, here we are looking at support mitigation as well. You've spoken about what the church is doing, which appears not substantial in respect of this. But sitting where you do, and assuming that, let's say, your boss is listening to this, I mean, what do you suggest that the church does a lot more to ensure that people going through whatever forms of challenges are supported, and two, that helps to mitigate their likelihood of getting themselves beyond the line?
Okay, thank you. So my first suggestion would be that we often do health screening. It will often be with high blood pressure, temperature, those things, weight.
Because non-communicable
we better add
diseases
mental screening. Recently, my wife's workplace, they did that for all the workers there. It's a hospital. And about half of them had been asked to go and see either a psychiatrist or something.
or a psychologist.
I was also going to mention nurses. Yeah. So then I would strongly advocate that going forward, churches should add mental screening. I don't know how it will be done. But even if it's once a year, it will help. So that through that we can identify people with mental challenges. I mean, things at an early stage can easily be handled. and prevented. Secondly, in the church, we need to build an environment where people are positively networked. The issue of trust among people, Madam was talking about social networks and those things. In the church, we need to emphasize that. Fellowship is powerful. When we fellowship and relate well, when I have an issue that is becoming a heavy burden on me, I can have a trusted brother. Look at Jesus. When he was stressed by his going to die on the cross, what did he do? He called Peter, James, and John. He said, Charlie,
come and help me pray.
I am troubled to the core. Accompany me. He had to tell them because of what the disciples, they could confide in them. And it's not wrong telling somebody that, Charlie, what is happening to me, I need help. But because of confidentiality and trust issue, today people cannot tell. James 5 will tell you that confess your sins to one another.
Yes.
And then, can we do that? No. I remember in 2003, 4, 5, thereabout, coming to the youth, I was with the prayer team. And our leader trained us in such a way that he made us feel that even when you're a prayer team member and you go to sin, don't feel that's the end of your life. So we had a code where should you go and sin, you come and say, I am wounded. Merely you say that, everybody understands, except someone who is not part of it. And then the leader will call you in confidentiality and you tell him what you have done. Then he talks to you, we all come and pray for forgiveness. You move on with your life. And it was a powerful thing. So occasionally you are there, you pray, then before we close you asked, any wounded person? And because we had built that confidentiality and trust, someone would just get and say, please, I'm wounded. And then the person was handled. I can imagine if that thing was not there, someone would have done something to hurt himself. Because people know me, I pray, I blow in tongues. Then they'll hear that I've gone to do this. Because of the guilt and the shame associated, and let me end it. The church should do that thing. That is that. Then also, especially we Christians, we got to know the God we serve. Mommy again mentioned the prodigal son story. That story, I would say that the best caption should have been the love of the father. Well, because the whole story is about the father more than the prodigal.
Yeah.
We have a father who is ready because of his love. Ephesians 3:16-17 will tell you that. I call it love 360. The love is so wide, so deep, so high, that no matter what, it can cover you. We need to live that life of love in the church. And love is about seeking the good of others, not hurting them. So that once the environment is full of love, trust, confidentiality, people will easily open up and tell you that I have this problem. If you don't help me, I don't know, my mind is blown up. We need to do that. And then we carry that to our homes, our workplaces, as Christians. That we will always be observant. You look at your colleague worker who has been moody for days and weeks. Approach, get closer, engage, and find out what is making him. Then let me say this. To the youth, we must cut down on our sharp change of taste. When I say that, I'm talking about people living extremely beyond their means. Because of this honest comparison. Now, someone goes to take a loan of 100,000 to have a wedding that in the community nobody has had before.
Right now, I cannot have a wedding.
And then after the wedding, because of the huge loan he took, the deduction at the end of the month, what is left is very little. And now bro is suffering, very broke. And that has rather created
a problem in the home.
Yes! Even at the workplace. Because bro, every day, lunch, special lunch, pack. And since for the past 2 weeks, pack a bag to me toy. And now people begin to talk about it, and now it's creating a problem. It can lead you to something like this. So the youth, let's live within our means. In your house, it's not by force to sell bottled water. If you know a cup of water, give it to the person. Oh no, more fee. It shouldn't be by force. Live within your means and be comfortable. Otherwise, it will put unnecessary stress on you.
Yeah.
And because of that, some youth are now borrowing money all around.
Yeah.
So in an environment, you borrowed money because of that unnecessary lifestyle you created for yourself. Now the people you owe are beginning to follow you for their money. If you don't have it, it can put unnecessary pressure on you and
That's
can lead
true.
to some of these things.
That's true.
So let's live within our means. Moderate life. Simple. One could eat work in peace, you not die. If you have your chop bar at the background, go and eat there. You can still live your life.
Choba no cry more flexible.
Master.
You see, there are a few questions coming through. I mean,
Sure.
we are losing out on time. We had a comment coming from Mrs. Martha Ofori, and she was asking that, what do you do in respect of somebody who continually asks or indicates that they want to take their lives, but then even after you've supported them financially or even given them advice, they still keep on coming up with things like that. Let me bring that to you, Lavina.
Right. So it's important in such a situation, you get them professional help. It may be that you may need to hold their hand, make that first contact so that they get that needed help and follow up.
So you direct them to professional
Professional help.
Okay.
And at this point, I'd like to stress that there's a toll-free line
Good.
manned by the Mental Health Authority that individuals can call in at no cost. And it's 0800 678 678. If we can put
0800
678
678. We hope that production is able to put that number up so that anytime you can refer to it. But the number is very simple: 0800 678 678. You shouldn't forget it. Please write it down somewhere, if not for your sake, for somebody else's sake. 0800 678 678. But let me give you that chance so that you talk about what the state does to compel people to get this kind of help. Then I'll let Lavina wrap it up for us. Yeah.
Okay, so currently what the state does is that, like I said earlier on, if you attempt to commit suicide or you attempt to take your own life, we just presume that you have a severe mental disorder. So the treatment, it's involuntary treatment because it's not somebody who ordinarily would have you there to be treated. So then the state compels you or places you into an approved mental health facility and takes you through a treatment process. Mind you, your family members or your caretakers can appeal against that decision. They can decide that they think that you shouldn't go through that route. And they can also get independent assessments because probably they feel like they will be able to take better care. So if they make a good case, then you can be taken out of that system. But the thing about the involuntary treatment is that it shouldn't exceed a period of a year. There are periodic assessments done by a tribunal set up by law. The tribunal ordinarily composes of it's an ad hoc tribunal, as and when. And there's a board that appoints the tribunal, and it's made up of a medical doctor, a social health worker, a mental health practitioner, someone who has previously had that kind of experience is also on the tribunal. And the tribunal is chaired by a lawyer of at least 10 years experience who will be appointed by the Attorney General. What I found interesting was the fact that someone who had gone through a similar experience is on the tribunal.
On the panel, yeah.
So I think that brings something to bear to the fore.
Empathy.
They can actually understand what you are going through. So the assessments are done on before you can even do that, you should have a treatment plan for the person. And because of the nature of this issue, the person is not confined or put behind bars. They are put in a space where they cannot harm themselves or harm others. So you not see a place where, let's say there's a rope hanging somewhere, the person at that point might attempt it. The person is allowed to wear their own clothes. The whole point I see is that to make the person feel as normal as possible, because you are not a prisoner. Prisoners typically wear uniforms. You can wear your own clothes, you have your own space. If your family can provide food for you, they are allowed to. Basically just to ensure that you don't feel as though something has been taken away from you. So
Which in itself could even affect you mentally further.
Yeah, so by the maximum time the law allows you to be under that involuntary kind of treatment, it's like I said earlier, it's 12 months. Yes, of course, after the 12 months, you can be reassessed.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so.
Thank you so much, Bodai. Lavina, I mean, wrapping it all up for us, I mean, you are the mental health practitioner in here, and a lot has been said. Right. How do we get to cut down this number? And in your final submission, I want you to give us a sense of, especially when it comes to young people,
Right.
the prevalence with young people and why it is very important that there be a lot more focus from society on young people and young people themselves take precautionary action.
Right. So for young people, it's very important because we realize that between the ages of 15 and 24, suicide is the 4th leading cause of death among this age range. And so when Papa was mentioning young people, I was very happy because our young people these days go through a lot, good and bad. And because of technology, life evolves and is very fast. Okay. And so they are also able to get access to means. And sometimes, unfortunately, media reportage does not help. Like somebody mentioned, there's a video going around. And people can actually mimic these acts, something we call copycat suicide. And most, if it's glorified, it's like a celebrity thing or it's glamorized in a way. So sometimes our media people need to help us by rather putting forward positive stories. People who have survived, people who have made meaning of their lives, regardless of the difficulties that they went through, becoming advocates, not showing maybe places that people can actually capitalize on or means. And also you're not using derogatory words of people who either have a mental health condition or have gone through such difficult situations. Being more empathetic and being more of an advocate of pointing people to help, like the helpline or sources of support, signposting them positively. That would be more supportive in ensuring that people can openly talk about their struggles. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I mean, on the issue of media, and a lot of the time when we say the media, people tend to think about traditional media, the TV stations, the radio stations, the print. Right now, because of social media, a lot of people's consumption of content we call media is through social media.
Yeah.
So anybody can stand a tripod, put their phone on it as a camera with some ring light or some light. They are shooting content and putting out there. Everybody out there has a certain responsibility to ensure that in the quest to create content that drives traffic to you, using whatever means, sensationalism, whatever the case may be, think about it knowing that your action could be pushing somebody to want to kill themselves. So let's all see ourselves as part of the media. If you're in your church and you are preaching, know that that content is being put on air or online somewhere. Somebody is going to hear about it. And you heard Reverend William Enti talk about the story of the prodigal son, and in his estimation, it being more apt, capturing it as the love of the Father. Let us be more loving, even in reprimand, as opposed to being so judgmental to make people feel so unworthy of the love of the Father. And it's for all of us. And today we've been talking about suicide, changing the narrative. And we've had the privilege of having for company Edmond Neobodai Akron, who is a legal practitioner. We've had also Reverend William Enti, who is the Associate Minister here at Trinity United Church, Legon, as well as Dr. Levina Jima, who is a psychiatrist. And our experts have helped us greatly in this conversation. That's how we wrap up this edition of Let's Talk About. My name is Benjamin Ofeado. I've been your host. We pray that you be a reason why somebody wants to live for another day, as opposed to wanting to take their own lives. Do have yourselves a good night. Take care, and see you same time next week.